Most people believe food expires because time destroys it. That belief is wrong. Time does nothing on its own. Food fails because its environment is allowed to attack it. Moisture creeps in. Oxygen reacts. Heat accelerates decay. Light degrades structure. Pests finish the job. Remove those enemies and suddenly, time loses its power. That is the core idea behind the infinity pantry. An infinity pantry is not about hoarding. It is not about panic buying, filling garages, or stacking shelves with whatever happens to be on sale. It is a deliberate system built around foods that are inherently stable. Foods that, when stored correctly, are not meaningfully limited by time. These are foods you buy once, protect properly, and rely on indefinitely. This matters because modern food culture has trained people to misunderstand expiration. The date printed on a package is rarely a hard safety deadline. In most cases, it is a quality estimate designed for inventory turnover, not survival. When supply chains are intact, that distinction feels academic. When they are not, it becomes critical. An infinity pantry is designed for the moments when resupply is uncertain, delayed, or impossible. Economic shocks, natural disasters, long-term disruptions. In those moments, the question is not whether your food tastes perfect. The question is whether it exists, whether it is safe, and whether it still delivers calories and utility. To understand how this works, you must understand the real enemies of food. There are 5, and they never change. The first is moisture. Water is life, but in storage, it is destruction. Moisture activates enzymes, enables microbial growth, and triggers spoilage. Many foods that appear dry are still vulnerable because ambient humidity slowly infiltrates packaging over time. The second is oxygen. Oxygen drives oxidation, which degrades fats, dulls flavors, and breaks down nutritional value. It also supports insects and aerobic microorganisms. If oxygen remains present, time will eventually win. The third is heat. Heat accelerates every chemical reaction involved in decay. A food that lasts 30 years at cool temperatures may fail in 5 when stored hot. This is why climate matters, and why storage location is a strategic decision, not a convenience. The fourth is light. Ultraviolet exposure damages molecular structure, particularly in fats and vitamins. Light is a silent degrader, often ignored, because its effects are gradual and invisible until failure occurs. The fifth is pests. Rodents, insects, and microorganisms exploit even tiny weaknesses. A single breach in packaging can destroy an entire supply. The infinity pantry exists to neutralize these 5 enemies simultaneously. This leads to the first rule. Food does not need to be complex to be durable. In fact, simplicity is strength. Foods with low moisture, minimal fat, stable chemistry, and historical precedent outperform modern processed products by orders of magnitude. Civilizations survived on them not because they were fashionable, but because they endured. The second rule is that never expire does not mean careless storage. No food is immortal in an uncontrolled environment. Infinity is conditional. Control the environment and lifespan stretches beyond practical limits. Ignore it, and even the most stable food will fail. The third rule is that durability alone is not enough. A survival pantry must also provide calories, functionality, and flexibility. Some foods fuel the body. Others preserve, sanitize, barter, or stabilize morale. The infinity pantry values all of these roles. This is why many well-meaning stockpiles collapse under real conditions. They focus on volume instead of stability, variety instead of resilience. They trust packaging instead of physics. When moisture enters, oxygen remains, or heat fluctuates. The entire system degrades together. The infinity pantry takes the opposite approach. It concentrates on a small number of foods that time cannot meaningfully erode when stored correctly. These foods form the foundation. Everything else is optional. In this series, each part will focus on one category of these foods. Not just what they are, but why they last, how people accidentally destroy them, and how to store them so that time becomes irrelevant. Some of these items will be obvious. Others will surprise you. One or two will challenge assumptions that most people never question. The goal is not to scare you. It is to recalibrate how you think about food, time, and security. When you understand why certain foods endure, you stop chasing expiration dates and start building permanence. An infinity pantry is not about preparing for the end of the world. It is about refusing to be fragile in a world that repeatedly proves it can be. In the next part, we begin with the simplest, most indestructible food humans have ever relied on. A substance that does not rot, does not spoil, and has shaped survival, trade, and civilization itself. If there is one substance that deserves to be called truly immortal, it is salt. Salt does not rot. It does not spoil. It does not support bacterial life. Time has no meaningful effect on it. Archaeologists have recovered salt that is thousands of years old, and chemically, it is no different from salt produced yesterday. This alone makes it the cornerstone of any infinity pantry. Salt's permanence comes from its structure. Sodium chloride is a stable crystalline compound. Microorganisms cannot consume it. Enzymes cannot break it down. Without moisture, salt remains unchanged indefinitely. This is not theory. It is proven by history. Before refrigeration, salt was survival itself. It preserved meat, fish, and vegetables across seasons. It allowed armies to march, cities to grow, and trade routes to exist. Entire economies were built around access to salt because without it, long-term food storage was impossible. In a crisis scenario, salt becomes even more valuable than it appears at first glance. First, salt is essential for human physiology. Sodium regulates nerve function, muscle contraction, and fluid balance. Without sufficient salt intake, even with enough calories, the body begins to fail. Weakness, confusion, and cramps appear long before starvation. This makes salt non-negotiable, not optional. Second, salt multiplies the lifespan of other foods. With salt, fresh meat can be cured. Vegetables can be fermented or preserved. Even low-quality food becomes safer and more stable. Salt turns short-term calories into long-term assets. Third, salt is a high-value barter item. In prolonged disruptions, small quantities of salt can outperform bulky goods in trade. It is universally understood, universally needed, and impossible to synthesize without infrastructure. Unlike money, it does not rely on trust. Unlike fuel, it does not evaporate or degrade. Despite its durability, most people still manage to store salt incorrectly. The most common mistake is moisture exposure. Salt does not go bad, but it absorbs water from the air. Over time, this causes clumping, hardening, or partial liquefaction in humid environments. This does not make salt unsafe, but it makes it inconvenient and signals poor storage conditions that may be damaging other foods. Another mistake is relying on weak packaging. Thin plastic bags and cardboard boxes offer no real protection against humidity or pests. Insects may not eat salt, but they will chew through packaging to reach other foods nearby, compromising everything stored together. Proper salt storage is simple, but must be deliberate. Salt should be kept completely dry, sealed in airtight containers. Glass jars with tight lids, heavy-duty plastic containers, or sealed buckets are all effective. In humid climates, adding a moisture absorber or desiccant dramatically improves long-term stability. Storage should be cool and dark, not because salt needs it, but because the environment protects everything around it. One critical distinction must be made: iodized salt versus non-iodized salt. Iodized salt contains added iodine, which slowly degrades over time. This does not make the salt unsafe, but it reduces its nutritional benefit. For true long-term storage, non-iodized salt is superior. Iodized salt can still be used and rotated, but it should not be the backbone of an infinity pantry. Quantity matters less than accessibility. Salt is dense, inexpensive, and compact. A relatively small volume can support years of use for cooking, preservation, and health. This is one of the rare cases where overbuying is both affordable and rational. Salt also has secondary uses that become critical under stress. It can be used for basic wound cleaning, oral rehydration solutions, and even limited sanitation tasks. These are not substitutes for medical supplies, but they are functional stopgaps when options disappear. In the logic of the infinity pantry, salt represents the ideal standard. It is chemically stable, historically validated, physiologically essential, and strategically valuable. It does not rely on technology, electricity, or constant rotation. Once stored correctly, it simply waits. Every other item in this series will be measured against this benchmark. Some will come close. None will surpass it. In the next part, we move from salt to sweetness. Two substances people often misunderstand, underestimate, or store incorrectly. Yet both can outlast generations when treated with the same respect for physics and environment. Sugar and honey are often dismissed as luxuries. In reality, they are two of the most misunderstood long-term survival foods ever used. People assume sweetness equals fragility. History proves the opposite. Like salt, sugar does not expire because of time. It fails only when its environment is mismanaged. Sugar is a crystalline carbohydrate with extremely low moisture content. In a dry, sealed state, it is hostile to bacteria and mold. Microorganisms require water to live, and sugar deprives them of it. This is why jams, syrups, and preserves have relied on sugar for centuries as a primary stabilizing agent. When people say sugar goes bad, they are usually describing physical changes, not spoilage. Sugar clumps. It hardens. It forms blocks. None of these mean it is unsafe. They mean moisture has entered. The chemistry remains intact. This distinction matters in a crisis. Hard sugar can be crushed. Clumped sugar can be dried. The calories remain. The function remains. Only convenience is lost. From a survival perspective, sugar delivers immediate energy. It is rapidly absorbed, easy to digest, and highly efficient in cold or high-exertion environments. While it cannot replace complex nutrition, it can prevent fatigue, mental fog, and morale collapse when food options narrow. Sugar also plays a structural role in an infinity pantry. It stabilizes other foods. It supports fermentation. It enables preservation techniques that extend the life of fruits and plant matter far beyond their natural limits. Without sugar, many traditional storage methods disappear. Honey takes this concept even further. Honey is not just stable, it is self-preserving. Its moisture content is extremely low, its acidity is high, and it contains enzymes that produce hydrogen peroxide in small amounts. This creates an environment where bacteria cannot survive. As long as honey is kept sealed and uncontaminated, it does not spoil. Archaeological finds have confirmed this repeatedly. Honey recovered from ancient containers has been tested and found safe to eat after centuries. The structure remains. The calories remain. The antimicrobial properties remain. The most common misunderstanding about honey is crystallization. When honey crystallizes, many people assume it has gone bad. In reality, crystallization is a sign of purity. It is a natural process in which glucose separates from water and forms crystals. Nothing has been lost. Crystallized honey can be returned to liquid form by gentle warming. A warm water bath is sufficient. Boiling is unnecessary and harmful, as excessive heat can damage beneficial enzymes. Even if honey is never reliquefied, it remains fully edible in solid form. From a survival standpoint, honey offers advantages sugar cannot. It contains trace minerals. It has antimicrobial properties. It can be used for basic wound care in emergencies. It supports morale in ways few foods can. In prolonged stress, familiar sweetness can be psychologically stabilizing. Storage errors are the only real threat to both sugar and honey. For sugar, moisture is the enemy. It must be stored in airtight containers, protected from humidity and pests. Glass, heavy plastic, or sealed buckets are ideal. Thin bags and cardboard boxes are invitations for failure. For honey, contamination is the risk. Introducing water, food particles, or dirty utensils can allow fermentation. Clean handling and sealed storage are essential. Light and heat should be minimized, not because honey is fragile, but because unnecessary stress accelerates quality loss. Quantity planning should be realistic. Sugar and honey are calorie-dense and compact. A modest supply goes a long way. They are also universally understood and valued, making them effective barter items in disrupted economies. In the logic of the infinity pantry, sugar and honey represent controlled indulgence with strategic value. They prove that long-term survival food does not have to be bland or joyless. Stability and comfort are not mutually exclusive. In the next part, we shift from sweetness to sustenance. A single grain that has fed civilizations for thousands of years and continues to form the backbone of long-term survival planning when stored correctly. If salt is immortality and sugar is endurance, white rice is survival at scale. No other food has sustained more human lives across more climates and centuries than rice. When stored correctly, white rice becomes one of the most reliable calorie foundations an infinity pantry can have. It is not exciting. It is not glamorous. It is indispensable. The critical distinction begins with a simple question. Why white rice and not brown rice? Brown rice contains the bran and germ. These components hold fats and oils that make brown rice more nutritious in the short term. But they are also its weakness. Fats oxidize. Over time, they go rancid, especially in warm environments. Even under good storage conditions, brown rice has a limited lifespan measured in months to a few years. White rice removes these unstable components. What remains is primarily starch, low moisture, low fat, chemically stable. Strip away the vulnerability and suddenly, time loses its leverage. Properly stored white rice can remain viable for decades. This is why white rice has followed humanity through wars, famines, migrations, and collapses. It is predictable, compact, and efficient. From a survival perspective, white rice offers 3 critical advantages. First, calories. Rice delivers dense, affordable energy. It stretches other foods, pairs with almost anything, and turns minimal ingredients into meals. When supply chains fail, calories are the first metric that matters. Second, digestibility. Rice is easy on the body. Under stress, illness, or caloric restriction, complex digestion becomes a liability. Rice provides fuel without demanding much from the system. Third, scalability. Rice stores densely, stacks cleanly, and cooks with minimal equipment. Fire, water, and a container are enough. Few foods offer that level of logistical simplicity. Despite these strengths, rice is one of the most commonly ruined long-term foods. The most frequent failure point is oxygen. Rice does not rot quickly, but oxygen invites insects. Rice weevils and larvae can survive dormant inside grains for years, waiting for favorable conditions. When oxygen and warmth are present, infestations emerge and spread. This is not a cleanliness issue. It is biology. The second failure point is moisture. Even small amounts of humidity will slowly degrade rice quality and invite mold over time. In hot, humid climates, untreated storage can destroy a rice stockpile faster than most people expect. The third failure point is complacency. Many assume store-bought packaging is sufficient. It is not. Thin plastic bags are designed for transport, not decades of storage. Proper rice storage transforms it from a short-term staple into a long-term asset. White rice should be sealed in oxygen-free environments. Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers are the gold standard. These bags should then be placed inside rigid containers to protect against puncture and pests. Storage should be cool, dark, and dry. When stored this way, rice does not meaningfully age. Its texture may change slightly over very long periods, but its safety and caloric value remain intact. Quantity planning is straightforward. Rice is cheap, available worldwide, and familiar to nearly every culture. This matters in stress scenarios. Food people recognize is food they will eat. Novel survival products often fail not because they are unsafe, but because they are psychologically rejected. Rice also plays a strategic role beyond calories. It pairs perfectly with other Infinity Pantry foods. Combined with dried beans, it forms a complete protein. Combined with salt, it becomes preservable and flexible. Combined with vinegar or fermented elements, it expands into long-term cultural food systems, not just emergency rations. There is one final misconception worth correcting. Rice does not need to taste perfect to be valuable. In survival planning, consistency beats novelty. A food that reliably feeds you day after day with minimal risk is more valuable than a rotating menu that fails under stress. Rice earns its place not because it excites, but because it endures. In the architecture of the Infinity Pantry, white rice is the load-bearing structure. Everything else builds on top of it. In the next part, we address the question rice cannot answer alone. Protein, a category of foods that many people store incorrectly, underestimate, or abandon too early, yet which can outlast generations when handled with the same discipline. Calories keep you alive. Protein keeps you functional. In long-term survival planning, this distinction is often ignored until it becomes a problem. Many food stockpiles are heavy on carbohydrates and dangerously light on protein. Dried beans exist to close that gap, and when stored correctly, they do so for decades. Beans are one of the oldest engineered survival foods in human history. They are compact, dry, nutritionally dense, and adaptable across cuisines. Unlike fresh protein sources, they do not rely on refrigeration, constant rotation, or complex infrastructure. Time does not destroy beans. Mismanagement does. The durability of dried beans comes from the same principles that protect rice: low moisture, low fat, stable structure. In a sealed, oxygen-free environment, dried beans are largely inert. Bacteria cannot grow, mold cannot activate, insects cannot proliferate. When people say beans go bad, They are usually describing hardness, not spoilage. Over long periods, beans gradually lose internal moisture and undergo structural changes that make them harder to rehydrate. This does not make them unsafe. It makes them more demanding to cook. Without understanding this difference, many people discard perfectly usable food. This is where preparation knowledge becomes part of the pantry. Older beans require longer soaking and longer cooking. Pressure cooking dramatically reduces the time and fuel required. Adding salt too early can toughen bean skins, while adding it later improves texture. These are not culinary details. In a resource-constrained environment, they are efficiency multipliers. From a survival nutrition standpoint, beans offer something few other long-term foods do: protein with depth. Beans contain complex carbohydrates, fiber, and a meaningful protein profile. When paired with white rice, they form a complete protein, supplying all essential amino acids. This combination has sustained populations for centuries, not because it was trendy, but because it worked. Beyond nutrition, beans offer psychological stability. They are familiar, they are filling, they create the sense of a real meal, which matters more than many planners realize. Morale erosion is a real risk in prolonged disruptions, and food monotony accelerates it. Storage errors remain the primary threat. Beans must be protected from oxygen and moisture. Like rice, they should be sealed in mylar with oxygen absorbers and stored in rigid containers. Temperature stability matters. Heat accelerates hardening and reduces quality faster than time alone. Another overlooked issue is fuel planning. Beans require more energy to cook than grains. Any pantry that relies on beans must also plan for sufficient fuel, pressure cooking capability, or pre-soaking time. Ignoring this turns a nutritional asset into a logistical burden. Quantity planning should be conservative but deliberate. Beans are dense and inexpensive, but variety matters. Different beans cook differently, absorb flavors differently, and reduce dietary fatigue. Lentils, for example, cook faster than many larger beans and can be strategically valuable when fuel is limited. Beans also carry barter value, though less concentrated than salt or alcohol. In extended crises, protein becomes scarce quickly. A dry, recognizable protein source gains importance as fresh meat disappears. In the logic of the infinity pantry, dried beans represent sustainability. They are not fast food. They are not convenience food. They are long-game food. They reward patience, planning, and discipline. Rice provides the foundation. Beans complete the structure. In the next part, we move away from food as nutrition and into food as an asset. A liquid that does not spoil carries extraordinary barter value and serves purposes far beyond consumption. Hard alcohol occupies a unique position in the infinity pantry. It is not essential for survival in the way calories or protein are, yet history repeatedly shows that it becomes one of the most valuable assets when systems break down. Unlike most consumables, hard alcohol does not expire in any meaningful way. Spirits with high alcohol content, typically above 40%, are chemically stable. Bacteria cannot grow in them. Mold cannot survive. Time does not rot them. A sealed bottle of distilled spirits will remain fundamentally unchanged for decades. This stability alone would justify its inclusion. Its true value goes much further. From a survival perspective, hard alcohol functions as a multi-role resource. First, it is a powerful barter item. In prolonged disruptions, people quickly exhaust comforts and luxuries. Alcohol becomes scarce not because demand disappears, but because production and distribution collapse. Distillation requires equipment, knowledge, and time. A sealed bottle represents concentrated effort and infrastructure that no longer exists. Unlike currency, alcohol's value is intuitive. It does not depend on trust in institutions. Unlike fuel, it does not evaporate or degrade. Small quantities can command disproportionate trade value, especially when stress, cold, or morale fatigue set in. Second, hard alcohol has medical and sanitation uses. High-proof spirits can function as emergency disinfectants for tools and surfaces. They can assist with limited wound cleaning when proper supplies are unavailable. While not a replacement for medical-grade solutions, they provide functional redundancy when options are few. Third, alcohol can serve as a controlled morale stabilizer. This is often uncomfortable to discuss, but it is real. In prolonged hardship, psychological strain accumulates. Ritual, familiarity, and controlled comfort can matter. Used responsibly, alcohol can mark transitions, celebrations, or moments of relief that help preserve social cohesion. Fourth, high-proof alcohol can function as a fuel source. It burns cleanly and predictably, useful for emergency heating, sterilization, or fire starting in controlled settings. Again, it is not a primary fuel, but it expands capability. Storage of hard alcohol is straightforward, but mistakes still happen. The primary rule is seal integrity. Alcohol does not spoil, but evaporation and contamination are possible if closures fail. Bottles should be stored upright, sealed, and protected from temperature extremes. Unlike wine, spirits do not benefit from aging once bottled, and heat only accelerates degradation of flavor compounds. Light exposure is another concern. Prolonged UV exposure can degrade quality over time. Dark storage preserves consistency, which matters more than refinement in a crisis context. One important distinction must be made between distilled spirits and lower alcohol beverages. Beer, wine, and fermented drinks are not stable long-term assets. They spoil, oxidize, and degrade. They belong in rotation systems, not infinity pantries. Only distilled spirits qualify for true long-term storage. Selection matters. Neutral spirits like vodka offer versatility. They can be used medicinally as fuel or diluted. Dark spirits like whiskey or rum often carry higher barter appeal due to familiarity and perceived value. Packaging also matters. Glass bottles signal permanence and quality, but they are fragile. Protective storage reduces loss. Quantity planning should be conservative. Alcohol is dense in value but not in necessity. A small, well-chosen supply is more effective than excess volume. Overaccumulation introduces risk without proportional benefit. In the framework of the infinity pantry, hard alcohol is not food. It is insurance. It is leverage. It is optional but powerful. It reminds us that survival is not only about nutrition, it is about flexibility, negotiation, and maintaining human systems under pressure. In the next part, we turn to a substance most people underestimate because it is so ordinary. An acid that quietly preserves food, cleans environments, and supports survival far beyond its role in cooking. Vinegar rarely appears on lists of survival essentials. It is too common, too familiar, and too inexpensive to be taken seriously. That is precisely why it deserves attention. Vinegar is not a primary food source, but it is a force multiplier. In the logic of the infinity pantry, it functions as infrastructure. Vinegar's durability comes from one simple fact: acidity. With a pH typically between 2 and 3, vinegar creates an environment hostile to most bacteria and pathogens. In sealed containers, it does not spoil in any meaningful way. Over time, it may darken slightly or develop harmless sediment, but its core function remains intact. This stability makes vinegar uniquely reliable in long-term storage. While it does not provide calories, it extends the usability, safety, and versatility of other foods and tools. One of vinegar's most critical roles is preservation. Acidic environments inhibit microbial growth. Vinegar enables pickling, which allows vegetables to be stored far beyond their fresh lifespan. In a disrupted supply environment, this ability to convert short-lived produce into shelf-stable food becomes strategic. Vinegar does not preserve calories on its own. It protects them from being lost. Vinegar also plays a role in food safety. It can reduce bacterial load on surfaces and food preparation tools. While it is not a sterilant, it is a meaningful risk reduction agent when proper sanitation options are limited. In situations where clean water and chemicals are scarce, vinegar becomes a practical alternative. Beyond food, vinegar has cleaning and maintenance applications that matter under stress. It can break down mineral buildup, neutralize odors, and assist in basic sanitation. These functions help prevent secondary problems that often emerge in prolonged crises: contamination, pest attraction, and illness caused by unsanitary conditions. Survival failures are often indirect. Vinegar helps close those gaps. Vinegar also supports digestion and appetite. Acidic foods stimulate appetite and improve palatability when diets become monotonous. This is not trivial. When food options narrow, people often eat less than they should, accelerating weakness and fatigue. Vinegar-based preparations can help maintain regular intake. Storage of vinegar is forgiving, but should still be deliberate. Vinegar should be kept in sealed containers, protected from extreme heat and light. Plastic and glass are both acceptable. Unlike many foods, vinegar tolerates temperature fluctuation without rapid degradation, making it suitable for less than ideal storage locations. There are different types of vinegar, and not all serve the same role. White distilled vinegar is the most versatile. It is strong, inexpensive, and ideal for cleaning, sanitation, and preservation. Apple cider vinegar offers additional culinary and digestive uses, but is less standardized. For an infinity pantry, white vinegar is the baseline. Others are optional. Quantity planning should reflect use, not consumption. Vinegar is used in small amounts, but its impact is cumulative. A modest supply can support preservation, cleaning, and food preparation for extended periods. In barter scenarios, vinegar has limited direct trade value compared to salt or alcohol, but its indirect value is high. Those who have it are able to preserve food and maintain sanitation longer. This creates leverage without obvious visibility. In the structure of the infinity pantry, vinegar is not a headline item. It is a support system. It does not keep you alive by itself, but it helps ensure that everything else does. In the next part, we move to items most people would never classify as survival food at all. Ingredients that are overlooked, underestimated, and often ignored, yet become surprisingly powerful when infrastructure disappears. When people think about survival food, they usually think in terms of meals, calories, protein, storage life. What they overlook are the small, unglamorous items that make a limited diet workable over the long term. Cornstarch and baking soda fall into this category. They are not primary foods, but they quietly support systems that fail without them. These substances endure for the same reason salt and sugar do: chemical simplicity. Cornstarch is almost pure carbohydrate, processed into a dry, stable powder. In the absence of moisture and contamination, it does not spoil. Baking soda, or sodium bicarbonate, is a stable alkaline compound. Time does not meaningfully degrade it. Both can sit unused for years and perform exactly as expected when needed. Their value is not in calories alone, It is in flexibility. Cornstarch functions as a thickener, binder, and extender. In cooking, it allows small quantities of ingredients to become filling meals. Thin soups become stews. Limited proteins become satisfying portions. When resources are constrained, the ability to increase satiety without increasing consumption is critical. Cornstarch also has non-food applications. It can be used for basic skin protection, chafing prevention, and moisture absorption. In environments where hygiene products run out, these small capabilities prevent larger health problems from developing. Baking soda offers a different kind of leverage. Its mild alkalinity allows it to neutralize acids, control odors, and assist in cleaning. In a survival context, it can be used for basic hygiene, surface cleaning, and limited oral care. Again, these are not luxuries. They are preventative measures that reduce illness risk over time. Baking soda also supports cooking in subtle but important ways. It can soften legumes, improve texture, and reduce cooking time when used correctly. In fuel-limited environments, even small efficiency gains matter. From a medical perspective, baking soda has limited emergency uses, such as buffering acidity in specific situations. These uses must be approached cautiously and knowledgeably, but they add another layer of redundancy when professional care is unavailable. The greatest mistake people make with these items is not misuse, it is omission. Because cornstarch and baking soda do not look like survival food, they are excluded. The result is a pantry that technically feeds people but fails to support long-term living. Small irritations compound. Hygiene degrades. Food becomes harder to eat and harder to prepare. Over time, these failures matter. Storage for both items is straightforward. They should be kept dry, sealed, and protected from contamination. Moisture is the only serious threat. Airtight containers eliminate it. Temperature and light are secondary concerns. Quantity planning should be modest. These are low-consumption, high-impact items. A few sealed containers can last years. Excess volume provides little benefit. In the Infinity Pantry framework, cornstarch and baking soda represent a shift in thinking. Survival is not just about staying alive. It is about maintaining function. Systems that prevent discomfort, inefficiency, and secondary illness extend survivability far more than people expect. In the final part, we address the most controversial category of all. A modern solution with impressive longevity, serious trade-offs, and a role that is often misunderstood. This is where the concept of never expire meets its limits and where strategy matters most. Freeze-dried foods are often presented as the ultimate survival solution. 30-year shelf life, lightweight, convenient, nutritionally dense. On paper, they appear to surpass everything else in the Infinity Pantry. In reality, they represent something more nuanced: capability with conditions. Understanding their true role requires separating marketing from physics. Freeze-drying works by removing nearly all moisture from food under low temperature and pressure. Without water, microbial activity stops. Chemical reactions slow to a crawl. Properly sealed freeze-dried food can remain stable for decades. This is not exaggeration. It is engineering. However, freeze-dried foods are not naturally immortal. Their longevity is entirely dependent on packaging integrity. Oxygen, moisture, and light are still enemies. The difference is that freeze-dried food begins in an extremely favorable state. When sealed in high-quality mylar with oxygen absorbers and stored in cool, dark conditions, shelf lives of 25 to 30 years are realistic. When packaging fails, degradation can be rapid and irreversible. This makes freeze-dried food powerful, but fragile in a specific way. From a survival perspective, freeze-dried foods offer clear advantages. They are lightweight, which matters for evacuation or mobility. They rehydrate quickly, saving fuel and time. They retain much of their original nutrition, texture, and flavor compared to other long-term options. In short-term crises or transitional periods, they perform exceptionally well. They also reduce planning complexity. Meals are pre-balanced. Preparation is simple. For people with limited time or experience, this lowers the barrier to entry. These benefits come at a cost. Freeze-dried foods are expensive relative to raw staples. They rely on industrial processes that cannot be replicated without infrastructure. Once consumed, they cannot be replaced locally. This makes them a buffer, not a foundation. There is also a psychological risk. Because freeze-dried meals feel complete and modern, people over-rely on them and neglect core pantry skills. When packaging fails, fuel runs low, or resupply is impossible, the system collapses quickly. In the Infinity Pantry, freeze-dried foods are not the base layer. They are the top layer. They excel as transition food, emergency rations, and contingency reserves. They buy time. They reduce stress during the most unstable phases of disruption. They are not designed to sustain entire populations indefinitely. This distinction reveals the final truth about never expire. No food is immortal on its own. What endures is not the item, but the system surrounding it. Control the environment, choose chemically stable foods, and understand their roles. Do that, and time becomes irrelevant for practical purposes. The Infinity Pantry is not about fear. It is about removing urgency. When food is stable, decisions improve. Panic fades. Strategy replaces reaction. A pantry built on salt, sugar, honey, rice, beans, vinegar, and utility staples forms a foundation that can persist across years, not months. Freeze-dried foods sit above that foundation, extending flexibility without undermining resilience. This is the difference between stockpiling and architecture. Stockpiles are consumed. Architectures endure. When you stop asking how long food lasts and start asking what makes it last, you move from preparation to permanence.